for Morialta.
Thank you, sir. My question is to the Minister for Tourism. When was the Minister first advised that the $32 million figure she was using to defend the Sam Smith concert mostly comprised negative press coverage? And with your leave, sir, and that of the House, I'll explain.
Leave is sought. Is leave granted? Member for Morialta.
Thank you, sir. FOI documents reveal that the Tourism Commission claimed an article about a concert attendee who allegedly, and I quote, peed in the mosh, unquote, was worth $3 million advertising value equivalent, that another article about the government refusing to say how much the concert cost taxpayers was worth $6.5 million, and that along with other stories, total negative coverage was valued at $24.5 million. The Minister has argued for months that this concert was a great deal for South Australia.
That question is on the cusp of order. That order. Order. On one view, that question is argumentative, mostly contained, and then seeking the Minister's view, admittedly in relation to a matter which would fall within her portfolio. However, there is no objection. And I'm going to permit the question. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The commentary today is about the advertising value equivalent, which is very commonly used as a methodology for calculating marketing. I have instructed the South Australian Tourism Commission not to use AVE going forward. As people know, there was a review post this publicity event and had recommendations within the review. Those conversations have been happening for some time, ever since it's been publicly available. And that decision, as I said, to instruct them going forward to not use that. Now, as I said, these conversations have been going some time since the review. But, you know, when I think about the figures that are most important—
Order. Member for Colton.
It's not about measuring marketing. It's about looking at the visitor economy. Never been stronger. Never been stronger. $8.3 billion of our visitor economy.
Member for Hammond. Order. Order. Minister has the call. Member for Hurdlevale.
Now, what that figure is a figure higher than pre-COVID. And it's a figure that we did not expect to achieve for another 12 months. That's the most important figure here. That's the most important figure that I focus on.
Order. 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 Treasurer is called to order. Members to the left and right. Order.
We made a decision that we wanted to support the tourism industry and build it back during 3 years of uncertainty. Let's not forget, not that long before COVID, we had devastating fires in the Adelaide Hills.
Member for Morialta. Order.
Also in Kangaroo Island, followed by the pandemic and, of course, more recently, the river. So my focus is us building back, and we've achieved more than ever before. But can I tell you what people have been saying to me? There's a complete absence of the opposition. This is the only thing that you have decided to talk about in tourism. I will talk about tourism forever in a day because there's a lot to talk about.
Member for Hammond. Member for Hammond is on a final warning. Member for Schubert.
Just this morning, I was at the Tourism Industry Council of South Australia, their annual conference. 350 delegates there, representing the more than 20,000 businesses involved in tourism, the highest number of businesses involved in tourism that we've ever seen. But not one member of the opposition bothered to go along to that conference. In fact, no one even knows who the Shadow Minister is.
There's a order. There is a point of order, Member for Hurdlevale, from the Member for Morialta, which I'll hear under 134.
Standing Order 98. In 3.5 minutes, the Minister hasn't gone near when she was told the $32 million figure was bogus.
Order. Order. That may be, but the Member for Morialta has not raised a standing order with me. I'm going to proceed on the basis that Standing Order 98 was the standing order he had in mind. Member for Florey is called to order. Bring the Minister back to the substance of the question. Minister.
The question that was asked was when that conversation happened and when was I told. Now, AVE, a commonly used methodology, independently analysed, has been used for years and years. Years and years. No reason to not have used it as one of the measures. Looking at Sam Smith, we looked at the 6 million people.
Member for Hartley.
The National Radio Partnership, the TV coverage, the articles in Rolling Stone and Billboard, the interviews that happened on Sunrise and the Project. These are the other measures that we use as well.
The Minister has concluded her answer. Member for Morialta.
Thank you, sir. When did the Minister determine that AVE was an unsuitable methodology, as she's just advised the House she did, for SA Tourism and direct them so? And with your leave and that of the House, I'll explain.
There is a point of order from the Treasurer, which I'll hear under 134.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's customary for a member, when asking somebody else in their House a question, to direct the question to a particular member.
Indeed it is. Member for Morialta.
Thank you, sir. My question is to the Minister for Tourism. When did the Minister determine that AVE was an unsuitable methodology for SA Tourism, as she's just advised the House that she did, and direct them accordingly? And when did she direct them accordingly? And, sir, with your leave and that of the House, I'll explain.
Leave is sought. Is leave granted?
Yes, thank you, sir. Yesterday morning, the South Australian Tourism Chief Executive was on the radio defending the use of advertising value equivalent as a measure of success. 2 hours later, the Minister told media she had directed SA Tourism not to use the measure anymore.
There is, on one view, the cusp of an argument or opinion in the language of the member's question. I have in mind particularly the suggestion that the Minister has informed the House X, Y and Z. The Minister may not also form that view, but I'm going to permit the question. Minister.
I will restate the conversation. There has been a lot of conversation about this unique publicity event that we had. And because of that, I instructed...
Order. Member for Flinders.
I instructed SATC to evaluate and do a review, because I think it was important for us to know what was the purpose of this event, which was to attract an international crowd, a global audience. And we used many different measurements, of which AVE was one. And we used that because it's been used for years and years, including by the opposition when they were in government. So the grand hypocrisy that this measure is not okay is just ridiculous.
Member for Morialta.
So let's just remind ourselves...
Member for Morialta. Order. Order. Treasurer's called to order.
Let's just have a little conversation about the SATC annual report 1890, when we had the illustrated 2019 swim edition, and KI was one of the 6 destinations worldwide. Yes. The activity resulted in US media coverage as advertising space rate of 32.5 million and reached an audience of 2.2 billion. So that was used for AVE.
Order.
I remember talking to David Ridgway, our Agent General, in 2019. In fact, the extent of free publicity on the Old Mate campaign attracted in excess of 2 million of earned media value.
Oh, there you go.
He goes on to say, and the demographics of all ages enjoying South Australia in the ad, including the older man.
There you go.
Order. Member for Flinders is warned. Order.
So just like the former government used influencers all the time, they also
Member for Flinders is on a final warning.
All the time. So this is a regularly used way of calculating.
Member for Flinders.
However, my role is twofold.
And the member for Hammond.
It is to grow the tourism economy, and we've done that, and we will continue to do that. My role is also here to represent South Australians, and questions have been asked. And my questions caused me to reflect, which was reflected also in the review. And that decision after time of conversation and discussion, that we would be not using this going forward. And that decision was made, and I instructed my department to that measure.
Very well. Supplementary question from the member for Morrie Alta.
Thank you, sir. Was that direction that the minister gave before or after the minister heard Emma Terry on the radio yesterday morning once again defending the use of AVE for SA tourism campaigns?
Well, I must say again, whether somebody on radio defended or didn't defend or took a particular position or not, or didn't take a particular position, requires leave. And then it might be introduced as a fact, if indeed it is a fact. Very well. Member for Morrie Alta.
So my question is to the Minister for Tourism. Did the Minister for Tourism hear the Chief Executive of SA Tourism on the radio yesterday morning? And with your leave, and that of the House, I'll explain.
Very well. Leave is sought. Is leave granted? Member for Morrie Alta.
Yesterday morning, the Chief Executive of SA Tourism defended AVE as a use for SA Tourism, as has the Minister for several months. Within 2 hours, the Minister told media she had directed SA Tourism to stop using it as a measure. Today in the House, the Minister has again defended its use.
There's a point of order under the standing order. I'm going to turn to the Treasurer under 134. I anticipate the Treasurer is going to put to me a number of standing orders. The Treasurer.
It's a breach of Standing Order 97, the way that the Deputy Leader framed his question. He didn't seek to introduce fact, he introduced argument, which is specifically prohibited by the Standing Order.
There is order. There is order. 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 I'm going to dispose of the standing... I'm going to dispose of the point of order under the standing orders. Members to my left and right, there is an additional complication. There is an additional complication with the question, and that is that it might be said that it doesn't necessarily arise wholly out of the question. However, that is a point of the finest distinction, Member for Morrie Alta, because I gave you the call on the basis that it was a question to be asked on the basis that it was supplementary to the answer. Nevertheless, there is some force in the matter the Treasurer raises with me. In order to expedite proceedings, I'm going to permit the question and turn to the Minister. Minister.
Much, yes, I did hear that interview.
Very well. Very well. Member for Playford.
To the Treasurer. Can the Treasurer update the House on ANZ's recent Statometer report and what it says about the state of the South Australian economy?
Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm grateful for the question from the member, because there was further good news released last week about the performance of the South Australian economy. Mr Speaker, last week ANZ released their Statometer report for the March quarter of 2023. And Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to report to the House that it showed while all jurisdictions are starting to see slowdowns in their economy's growth, South Australia's slowdown has been less severe than other states and territories. ANZ notes that the health of South Australia's businesses, as measured by both AIG's Industry Index and NAB's Business Survey, is faring far better than the national average. The report also notes the most recent CPI figures showed slower quarter-on-quarter growth in Adelaide's prices than the average of most of the capital cities.
There's a point of order from the member for Hartley, which I'll hear under 134.
This release appears to have been loaded to the internet on the 26th of May, and it's now in your inbox. And the Minister seems to be repeating what is already in the public domain.
I'll endeavour to obtain a copy of the material the member has sent to me. However, order. Order. Member for Flory and the member for Flinders will cease their exchange. The member for Wright is called to order. I don't immediately have access to that material, but I'll keep the point of order in mind. I will endeavour to take in the material that the member provides to me.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's like a little dose of 2014 again, isn't it? Except without our friends Stefan and Sam to assist the member for Hartley in those points of order. Those were salad days, and they're right back where they deserve to be, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, this means that inflation was easing faster than the rest of the country in the March quarter, which of course is welcome news given the high rates of inflation that South Australia has been experiencing. ANZ also attributes our above-average economic performance to South Australia's employment market, goods exports and retail spending growth being stronger than national averages. And, Mr Speaker, when it comes to retail spending, last week also saw the ABS release their retail trade figures for April. More than $2.28 billion was spent in April in South Australia, Mr Speaker, according to the Bureau. This means that retail trade growth through the year in South Australia was 7.6% in seasonally adjusted terms. This was easily the highest in the nation and significantly above the national average of 4.2%. Only South Australia, Western Australia and Queensland recorded positive growth in retail trade in April. The ABS attributes the strength of our growth in retail sales to the AFL Gather Round and Live Golf Tournament. The ABS said turnover is at record level in South Australia, following 3 straight rises of 0.6% and boosted by the inaugural AFL Gather Round and Live Golf Adelaide Tournament this month. What a remarkable endorsement, Mr Speaker, from the independent Commonwealth Government statisticians, the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And, Mr Speaker, the praise for the South Australian economy isn't just limited to the ANZ. CommSec, of course, has also recently noted that the South Australian economy ranked second in the nation, driven by higher than average population growth, construction activity and private business sector equipment investment. Business SA also confirmed the impact that major events are having on the South Australian economy. Business SA attributes South Australia's business confidence to being higher than the national average due to the return of the Adelaide 500, Mr Speaker, and also the introduction of the AFL Gather Round and the Live Golf Tournament. Business SA also noted that an overwhelming 77.9% of survey respondents viewed large-scale events as beneficial to business in the state. And, Mr Speaker, it's worth just recounting for the benefit of the House the effort referred to earlier by the Minister for Tourism, not only the Velo Adelaide 500, but also the new Harvest Rock Festival, expanding the Adelaide Fringe Festival, the new AFL Gather Round Live Golf, and bringing back another important event, Mr Speaker, which was so callously cut by the previous government. You remember the previous government not having a dedicated Minister for Tourism. Instead, it was the Premier who wanted to indulge in a festival of the curious, the Adelaide Motorsport Festival, another resounding success here in South Australia.
Before I call the member for Morialta to dispose of the point of order raised by the member for Hartley, I observe that it's been the practice of the House to prevent members from reading material in the public domain, but I also observe that the Treasurer appears to have departed from any content that was exclusively in the public domain. Member for Morialta.
Thank you, sir. My question is to the Minister for Tourism. Did the Minister, her staff or anyone in government ask any questions or raise any concerns about the use of advertising value equivalent methodology prior to yesterday?
Minister.
Well, obviously, I was made aware that some FOIs had been requested in this field, but I think people have been asking about advertising value equivalent. In fact, the absolute hypocrisy of you, because you've raised it for some time and you've used it consistently, as I said, for Old Mate, Sports Illustrated. This was a regularly used methodology. And so, why wouldn't we use that going forward? And I think, though, when you look at the details...
Order. The member for Hammond continues to interject concerning, as I understand it, Old Mate. Well, Old Mate, it's time for you to go. 137A for the remainder of question time. Time for you to go. Minister. Minister.
And that's why I instructed SATC not to use it any further. But look, when we look at that $8.3 million, can I tell you the best story here? I know we've talked a lot about major events and they've been brilliant, but it's actually regional tourism. Regional tourism now is 48 cents in the dollar. Regions matter. South Australians discovered their own backyard, and in fact, we are just shy of $4 billion. How would you know? You never go to anything. We're just shy. No one was there this morning. None of you. None.
Order. Order. There are interjections to my left and right. Minister. Minister. Order. Order. Member for Flory is on a final warning. Member for Badcoe is recognised for a first warning. And there were numerous interjections to my left. Minister.
Thank you. So this is a story that I want to keep talking about. And just this morning I released our agri-tourism.
Order. There's a point of order under 134. Order. Member for Taylor is warned. There's a point of order under 134, which I'll hear from the member for Moralta.
Thank you, sir. Standing Order 98. The question was simple and direct and unrelated to what the minister is now debating about.
There is some force in the point of order that has been raised with me. I'll remind the Minister of Standing Order 98 and bring her to the substance of the question.
I think the question goes back to what I answered before, is I asked the SATC for review because questions had been asked about this unique publicity event. And
Order. Minister has the call. Order. Members, a minister can answer a question in any way that they choose, provided it falls within the standing orders. Minister.
Thank you very much. And obviously, we looked at several different ways of analysing and capturing this data, of which AVE, a commonly used independent analyse methodology, was one.
Order.
But during the review, we talked about what the recommendations are going forward. And I think one of the key parts about it is we need to capture and monitor performance in a better way. And since that time, when that publicly released review was out, that conversation has been taking place between SATC and myself. And we will continue to do it. And we made that decision, and it came to fruition when I went publicly yesterday and informed people of that. I've instructed that we won't use it going forward. But in the time that I have, let me go back to what's most important here. What's most important
Order.
is the 8.3
Minister,
million
member for
that we
Flinders is called to
received
order. Minister has the call.
and the role that the regions have played within it. And
Order.
all right, well,
Order. The member for Moralta on a point of order.
So I think the minister's indicated she's concluded her answer, and so I seek the call.
Order.
Oh, she hasn't. Okay, in that case, Standing Order 98.
I'll turn to. Very well. Are you withdrawing your point of order, member for Moralta?
Standing Order 98 debate. I misunderstood the minister when she sat down.
I see. The Treasurer may wish to order. The Treasurer may wish to address me on the same point of order.
Well, I actually rise on another point of order, and that is that the conduct of the Deputy Leader offends Standing Order 131. It is a practice of his to continually seek to interrupt members while they are on their feet, in particular while they are trying to provide answers to the House during question time. And he does it wrapped up in the based on a bogus point of order, Mr Speaker, and I ask that you call him to order or worse.
Order. Dispose of the standing orders consecutively. 98 from the member for Moralta. I'll direct the minister to come to the substance of the question. I observe that the minister has given considerable context, and we're now some way through the question. In relation to 131 raised by the Treasurer, members will know that the standing orders prevent interruption. A member may not interrupt another member who is speaking except to call another attention. Order, except to call attention to a point of order or to call attention to a lack of quorum, or to move a motion that is permitted by standing orders to be moved at any time. I'll keep the standing order closely in mind. Minister.
Mr Speaker, look, I can't speak more clearly than I have already. Questions were asked and concerns were raised, and we did the evaluation, and that outlined several measures, and included AVE, because that was a standard measure analysed independently, and it was used consistently by the opposition where they're in government. I had no doubt to say, why wouldn't we use this? But when we looked at the evaluation, we made some recommendations for monitoring performance, and the conversations go forward that the type of data that this was collecting. So when you looked at the Sports Illustrated in 2019, the same figure was calculated in the same way. I don't think it's a good capture of data, because I think what we should be doing is talking about South Australia in a positive way. We know that people are talking about South Australia more in the past year than they have for the past 10 years. We are in a great space, and events and tourism has played a very strong role in this area. We know we have a great opportunity for AUKUS going forward. We know that hydrogen is something that's incredibly exciting for building forward. My point is...
The Minister's time has expired. I'm turning to the member for Elder. It's only the third government question for the day. Member for Elder.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Child Protection. How is the government listening to carers and creating opportunities for them to inform change within the child protection system in South Australia?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I very much thank the member for her question and for her ongoing interest in how we can best support carers. I acknowledge the crucial role that carers play within the child protection system, and I'm sure that all members in this place recognise and appreciate the pivotal role of carers and the profound complexities that are involved in providing care to a child. In recognising those complexities and in honouring the generous ways in which carers nurture children, opening their homes and hearts to them, our government will listen to their experience and their knowledge. Listening to carers and working with them provides us with the ability to strengthen foundations that lead to the establishment of positive placements for children, to increase carer engagement and to ensure genuine partnership between government and carers. Strengthening this important partnership enables carers to contribute to the shaping of changes within the child protection system. Following the receipt of the report of the independent inquiry into foster and kinship care and the recommendations, I immediately engaged with carers and other stakeholders to create opportunities to discuss the report and its recommendations. Since becoming Minister, and indeed when the Shadow Minister, I have held a wide range of roundtables and forums and joined sessions across the state with children and young people, with foster and kinship carers, with carer organisations, support providers, government agencies, workers, other stakeholders to hear their feedback on a range of matters important to them. I have greatly appreciated the time taken from all who have engaged in these conversations to date. One of the key recommendations from Dr Arney's inquiry was the need for strong and structured consultations with carers, with Dr Arney recommending, quote, that a formal body such as a carer council be created and suitably resourced to provide advice directly to the South Australian Government through the Minister for Child Protection. I will continue to meet with those involved across the child protection system, and in direct response to Dr Arney's recommendations, our government has engaged Connecting Foster and Kinship Carers SA in the establishment and ongoing support of the Carer Council. The Carer Council will comprise at least 12 carers of children currently in care, including carers from both metropolitan and regional areas and Aboriginal carers, and it will meet at least 3 times a year. The Carer Council will discuss key issues faced by carers in order to assist, guide and inform the work that is being done as part of the broader reform and engagement processes happening across the child protection system. The Carer Council, of course, sits alongside the recently established Child Protection Expert Group that has been developed to challenge orthodoxy and examine current practice and new ideas, and to contend with the complex challenges facing families and our state's child protection system, and alongside a number of other groups focused on amplifying voices and helping to make improvements. The Carer Council will help contribute to the long-term vision for the system and help ensure that the voices of carers are central to reform. The establishment of this council clearly demonstrates our government's commitment to amplifying the voices of all stakeholders as we strive to meet the needs of vulnerable children and young people in South Australia.
Member for Moralta.
Thank you, sir. My question is to the Minister for Tourism. Has the Minister received any advice that the New South Wales Government put an offer in to get the Sam Smith Influencer Concert? And with your leave and out of the House, sir, I'll explain.
Leave orders leave granted. There's a point of order from the Treasurer, which I'll hear under 134.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. I mean, that question assumes that such an offer was made.
It may well. To resolve the matter expeditiously, I'll ask the member for Moralta to rephrase.
Thank you, sir. My question is to the Minister for Tourism. What, if any, advice has the Minister received about whether or not the New South Wales Government put an offer in for the Sam Smith concert? And with your leave and that of the House, I'll explain.
Leave orders leave granted.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. On the 8th of February this year, the Minister said, and I quote, "Should we not have bid for this, Sam Smith would have done this promotional concert announcing their Australian tour and their new album in front of the Sydney Harbour Bridge or the Sydney Opera House."
I'm going to allow the question, although on one view it might be hypothetical. Another way to ask the question is simply to put it directly and to say, has the Minister received X or Y? In any case, yes, that may be, but what, if any, preceded that? And that, on one view, introduces an element that I referred to. Minister.
Mr Speaker, thank you for repeating what I said in the Parliament. I was advised by the Tourism Commission that Frontier Touring put out what was a very competitive bid process, that many states were interested in being involved. And at the time, it was seen as an opportunity in what was often something that would be at a much larger state that would be likely to go for, likely to be in front of Sydney Harbour Bridge or the Opera House. Now, I was advised verbally by the Tourism Commission that is the expectations of these types of unique publicity events. I had no reason to doubt that advice. It was a process by Frontier Touring. It was a commercial arrangement, and that was the situation. I stand by what I said then on the advice that I received, and I stand by it now. It was a unique opportunity, a unique publicity event. I doubt we'll get anything like this type of opportunity again. And this was an opportunity for that global young event. But these types of things happen all the time in Melbourne and Sydney, and that was highly likely to happen this time again had we not gone for it. That's what I was advised, and I stand by that.
The member for Moralta and then the member for Elizabeth. Member for Moralta.
Thank you, sir. My question is to the Minister for Tourism. Has the Minister for Tourism read any transcripts of the Chief Executive of SA Tourism from the Budget and Finance Committee? And with your leave and out of the House, I'll explain.
Leave orders leave granted. Member for Moralta.
Thank you, sir. On the 8th of May, the South Australian Tourism Commission CE, Ms Terry, said, quote, "I'm not aware if anyone else bid for it. I'm not privy to that information if anyone else bid for Sam Smith."
Minister.
Yes, I read the transcript, and she wasn't the CE at the time, and I was advised by the Executive Director of Marketing that this was the situation of how it occurred. It was an opportunity that Frontier Touring presented to different tourism commissions, and the opportunity was taken up by us.
There's a supplementary question from the member for Moralta.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister release publicly the advice that she's just referred to?
Minister.
I received verbal advice, as I just said before.
Member for Elizabeth. Order. Member for Flory. Member for Elizabeth has the call.
Thank you, sir. My question is to the Minister for Health and Wellbeing. Can the Minister update the House on the resourcing for Keith and District Hospital?
Minister.
Thank you very much, sir, and I thank the member for Elizabeth for his interest in this important topic, and I can provide an update in relation to the Keith Hospital. And as members will be aware, this has been an ongoing issue over the last decade or so under successive governments at both sides of the parliament in relation to the funding of the Keith Hospital. The Keith Hospital being a community hospital, a private hospital with a board appointed by the community, but has always received funding from the state government to enable its operation. As a private hospital and in a challenging environment, it has often faced uncertainty in terms of its operations going forward, and there's often been disputes in terms of the level of funding. Obviously, that's happened over the last decade or so, certainly happened over the last few years as well. There were a number of times at which there was last-minute funding agreements reached and there was a threat of closure for that important hospital. And of course, this is the only hospital in that significant distance between Bordertown all the way to Tailem Bend, which obviously provides not only services for the local community, but there's always concern in terms of that significant stretch of distance not having appropriate services if the Keith Hospital was no longer to be there. Of course, the Keith Hospital being one of those hospitals which over the last 50 years, when most of the other community hospitals joined SA Health, decided not to do that and stayed outside of the then SA Health Commission. We were elected on a platform of investing in health right across South Australia, and we made that strategic decision not to proceed. We made that strategic decision not to proceed with the $662 million basketball stadium and to invest.
Order. 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 Minister has the call. Minister.
And to invest all of that money in our health system, of which at least $100 million.
Order. 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 Member for Newland, member for Morphett, member for Elizabeth, and member for Wright.
Of course, at least $100 million of that was going directly to Country Health. And we were very proud that we announced a $52 million investment in health services across the southeast and the Limestone Coast, of which $9.75 million was designated for the Keith Hospital over a 7-year period to make sure that there was financial certainty for the operations of that hospital, so there wasn't these continual last-minute deadlines. However, of course, since then we've been working together with the Keith Hospital Board and the Limestone Coast Local Health Network, and they've been working together on a new model of care for Keith, which will be the Keith and District Healthcare model, which will see the Keith Hospital become part of the Limestone Coast Local Health Network. We'll see the Keith Hospital Board become a health advisory council with those assets kept through that HAC process, as is in operation in a number of country hospitals across South Australia, and will be a new model that will provide access to urgent care with a community paramedic, nurse practitioner and allied health roles, as well as hospital in the home services to that community. So I really want to congratulate the board, and particularly Peter Brookman, for his work. This is now going to be in operation on the 1st of July, providing certainty to the Keith community around those services. It's been supported through public meetings by the Keith community. I'd also like to thank the member for MacKillop for his work in supporting his community in relation to this important hospital for people who live in the Keith community.
Member for Morialta.
Sir, my question is to the Minister for Tourism. Can the Minister advise whether the government has made any payments to Zara and Mike Tindall, and if so, how much? And with your leave, sir, and that of the House, I'll explain.
Leave is sorted, leave granted. Member for Morialta.
Thank you. Royal family members Zara and Mike Tindall were in attendance at the Adelaide 500 and state dinner, but the government has never revealed at what cost to taxpayers, despite $6.5 million worth of news coverage criticising the government for its refusal to reveal this figure.
Premier.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Shadow Minister for his question. As the Minister that is responsible for the Adelaide 500, I'm more than happy to answer the Shadow Minister's question. I note that there's a bit of a theme that has emerged from the opposition, and that is that they seem to be opposed to South Australia getting out there on the front foot, getting major events for our state and selling our story to the rest of the country.
Order. Member for Colton. Order. Order.
The Leader of the Opposition opposed Gather Round.
Yes,
he opposed Gather Round.
Amazing.
Opposed Live Golf. We know they scrapped the Adelaide 500. And what they have consistently sought to do
Order.
is up.
Order. Order. Treasurer's call to order. The member for Hartley. Order. The exchange between the member for Hartley and the Treasurer will cease The member for Morialta on a point of order under 134.
Thank you, sir. Standing Order 98. The question was directly related to payments to the Tyndalls. The Premier is debating on a much broader range of issues.
Order. Have the member for Florey is on a final warning with 3 minutes remaining. Order. Order. There are interjections continuing from my left and right. I'm seeking to dispose of the point of order. Order. Some latitude is provided to the Premier and the Leader because they are the Premier and the Leader, and to ensure that some context might be introduced as well. I, however, will remind the Premier of the standing orders. The Premier.
Speaker, so there's a consistent theme here that those in the opposition seem to have a point of disagreement with the government, which has been assertive and will remain assertive about getting out there and telling our story across the country. And major events are a powerful means to be able to do that. Another good example, of course, is the FIFA World Cup. Now, this is an extraordinary event to celebrate women's football globally that is coming up in only a few weeks' time. And it is happening here in South Australia. It is happening here in South Australia, Mr Speaker, because those opposite had to be shamed into making a bid for the Women's World Cup. And we are very excited, Mr Speaker, to be able to host those events. I had a meeting with senior officials from the Women's World Cup from FIFA only a few weeks ago with the Minister for Sport. So we will continue to put our best foot forward to promote the state. Now, that, of course, means investing in those events and elevating those events using practices that have been adopted by the former government time immemorial. Having celebrities attend major events is not a new tactic. It's been one that's been deployed by our would-be competitors from Victoria and New South Wales. It's a tactic that has been deployed by the Liberal Party when they are in government. But be under no misapprehension, Mr Speaker, this government, under the stewardship of the Minister for Tourism and everybody else on this side of the House, we will continue to use major events to promote everything our state has to tell the rest of the nation.